Welcome back to the Tkacs channel. I'm looking at the Sidi X-Power. This is the SC model. The SC model has a molded sole on the bottom rather than a stitched sole like you see here on the Crossfire 3. They do have a version of the X-Power, which is the X-Power Enduro. The Enduro has a waterproofed liner and it also has that stitched sole. So if you prefer the stitch and you want waterproof, it is something that's available in that boot. Also, what's really notable is at the bottom of the SC is a very smooth sole. There's just very little bit of cleat up on the tippy toe here, but the rest of it's a very smooth base. Also, it's a very hard rubber. I did find that was an issue when I was riding the Ducati Desert X with the stock foot pegs and the stock factory cleats on them, is that even with the lightest moisture, like just a little moisture in the air, I was slipping off of those foot pegs. That was kind of an issue here. I did switch those foot pegs to something with much better cleats and it was never an issue again. I don't know if the Enduro has a softer sole. I know that on my Crossfires, with the sole that comes on the Crossfire, this is not a problem and it's very comfortable and works very well on those stock foot pegs, but the SC definitely did have a problem with that. If you're gonna go for this for adventure riding, I would certainly consider upgrading those foot pegs to have a little more cleat or to look into the Enduro model. One of the boots that I've been a huge fan of over the years as a mid-priced entry-level boot to encourage adventure riders to get into an Enduro or actual off-road boot is the Tkacs 7. This is the Tkacs 7 Enduro. We don't need that boot anymore. But it's the Tkacs 7 Enduro, and this has been one because it does have a cleat in it. It's an affordable boot, and just trying to get people out of those adventure boots and into something that actually provides protection. The X-Power, I think, is now currently my #1 recommendation. There are two things that the X-Power does much better than the Target, and it's very clear that Sidi is targeting the Tkacs 7 with this boot. First of all is that it's very shallow up here in the shin area, where the Tkacs 7 was never built as an Enduro boot, it was built as an off-road boot. And most commonly, we have armor on our leg that tucks into the boot. The boot helps hold that armor into place. That provides more space for that armor, but also that armor is part of this clamping that happens at the top that holds the boot down on your leg, that gives you that torsional protection. I'll go into my rating system here again in just a moment. And so if you have very large calves, this is definitely still a great choice, you know, that Alpinestars, but with this boot, being able to clamp down next to the rider on their calf and having this narrower upper, it gives you a lot more options. You don't have to buy gear specifically to fit your boot anymore. You can just wear the adventure pants that you already own. The other aspect of this boot that really stands out just has to do with what I call hyperflexion, and that's the amount of sole support. When you look at something like the Tkacs 7, and when I grab this boot, you can see I can bend right at the toe and get a lot of flex. It does make it comfortable for walking around, and Alpinestars knows that because they built this as a trail boot, you might be off the bike, walking, pushing, it makes it more comfortable. It is at the expense of protection as a rider. Where the Sidi, there is no bend hardly at all on that. I personally don't find that to be an issue when I'm walking around, but it is definitely a much, much stiffer boot. Sidi's been well known for being narrow at the toe box. The X-Power is possibly the widest toe box of any boot I've currently used. When you first put your foot into it, it'll feel a little bit tapered up on the edges of the foot, but this is a boot that breaks in. It does become more flexible as you use it. Some of the off-road boots are stiff enough that they don't change a lot from new to used. I've been using this boot for the entire season. We're talking almost 6 months of use now, of hard use, and this has been my primary boot. Turns out when Atomic-Moto sent me the boot, and I said, yeah, I would love to do some boot testing, but I don't want boots for a weekend. I don't want to just try them on. I want boots I can really abuse and see how they hold up. And Atomic-Moto was like, you got a deal. We'll send you the boots. When you're done with them, you send them back, no charge no charge to use, so there's no compensation on either side. I just get to abuse them, beat them up, and then share with you how these do. So it definitely does have some break-in. The toe box actually widens up a little bit after break-in, not a lot, but it definitely widens up on that toe box. When I score boots, and I go through and I look at, basically I have what I consider a level 2 and a level 3 protection, level 2 being an enduro boot, and level 3 being a motocross style boot. These are both off-road ratings. These are both off-road boots, and again, very obvious that these two boots are market competitors. The Tech 7 did really well when I did the review on that boot. It checked every category for abrasion, midsole support, mid-calf rise, toe box support and protection, crush protection, and it had torsional rigidity with that 4-buckle system, provided that your calf was large enough or that you had armor inside the boot. What it did not do well on is the hyperflexion and the toe. The Sidi, although this is what would be closer to an entry-level boot for them, but what I would call a mid-price boot, it does abrasion, midsole, mid-calf, toe box, crush, hyperflexion, and torsional rotation. And what that means is that I'm looking for a boot that if I hit the pavement, it's going to have abrasion protection on the street, midsole support. What I'm looking for is enough support in the bottom of the sole here that when you're standing on the foot pegs, most specifically, those more ideal smaller foot pegs rather than the big, massive wing-like adventure foot pegs, which are designed to help give you support if you're wearing a soft-soled adventure boot. And this offers that very good midsole support. Obviously, mid-rise and or above, these are both taller boots in the actual off-road category. The toe box, which is just crush protection, and this one definitely has good solid protection similar to its competitor. Although it is notable that when you look at the profile of the boot, the Sidi does have a narrower toe height, which I really don't notice when I'm riding in the boot. I don't find any advantage to having a tall toe box. I prefer the width. That makes it easier for shifting. And that's going to be important because you do have that stiff sole in it, and you aren't going to be able to shift like you would on a normal street bike. It has crush protection. Crush protection is just if you fall down, will the bike actually crush? Do you have protection that'll keep it from injuring yourself when you get caught underneath the bike? This absolutely does that. Hyperflexion is that flex at the toe, which this boot does exceptionally well. And the last one is torsional rotation, and being a 4-buckle boot, being able to have this narrow upper calf that clamps down tight onto the rider's leg, and that is that when you plant your foot and you continue to twist, that you don't end up snapping or twisting those lower leg bones and ending up with a fracture down there, or a spiral fracture. The X-Power performs exceptional in all of those protection categories. All right, so the question is if it's a most magnificent boot, and I mean it is protective, what are the negatives? If I reach back down here and I grab its bigger, more expensive brother, the Crossfire 3, it actually outperforms it in some categories. If I try to flex this boot sideways, it doesn't move at all. When I take the Crossfire 3, I can actually get some movement in there. Now keep in mind that when we're moving, there's more length here. You're usually not going to get a pressure point directly there. But the hinge system on the X-Power provides, from what I can tell, better protection than even the upper class. It also has a strap on the back of the boot, so you don't slide too far forward. It limits the back movement, but does allow movement. It has the hinges on the side. Where it comes up a little bit short on the more expensive boots is the liner on the inside of the boot. It does seem to pick up odor a little faster than the Big Brother did. And I did use it a lot, and I used it in really hot temperatures. Obviously, we need to dry the boots out frequently. We need to keep them powdered to protect them so they don't have growth in there. But it did definitely happen to pick that up. Certainly much better than the bottom end entry-level boots that you might look at, but just not quite as well as its more expensive brother. The other way that Sidi helped keep the price down on this is that well, there's really no replaceable parts on this, other than if you break one of these clamps, and these are the typical Sidi clamping system, which is very convenient, very good, very sturdy system. I really do like that. But other than replacing that one little strap, there's nothing replaceable on this boot. When it wears out, you buy a new boot. The exception is if you do have the X-Power Enduro, which is a stitched sole, you can remove and restitch a new sole on the Enduro version of the boot. The feel of the boot overall, when you look at the way the materials flex and sit, it definitely doesn't feel like I'm wearing a really high-end, really expensive boot. It feels like a mid-level boot or something that Sidi would have more towards their entry-level category. But once your pants are over the top and you're walking around, you're really not going to notice it. The squeak that we all get when we walk around on the boots, it's better than average. I find both my Crossfire 3s and my Tech 7s provide a lot more squeak and a lot more noise. This is definitely a quieter boot. Boots are supposed to squeak when you walk. And when they have all of these seams and all these hinges on them, when those loosen up enough that they don't actually squeak and make noise, that means they're too loose to provide protection and they're no longer a good boot. When your boots stop squeaking, it's time to replace and buy new boots. Just something to keep in mind. In summary, fantastic boot. For me right now, this is my #1 recommendation for somebody in the adventure category looking for a good boot in the mid-priced range. And that's just because the boot is exceptional in all of its protection categories. It's a beautiful fit. Underneath your riding gear, it doesn't look bulky when you're riding around. It provides a lot of space in the toe box. It has a narrow box for shifting. Guys, I think Sidi's got a win on this. I expect this to be a boot that will become a very dominant boot within the market. I did reach out to Atomic-Moto and asked if they were still interested in supporting me testing some other boots. They said absolutely. So I am going to reach out and get some Garnets and some different boots that are in the category and put them through the same sort of abuse, which means that these reviews are not going to be quick because I've got to put at least 6 months of hard use, hard abuse. How's this boot going to wear in time? Is it going to break down? Does it break in? Are there hot spots, weird things about the boots that matter? Thanks for watching the channel. I know it's an education channel, but for me, if a review is educational, then that counts. Thanks, guys. Appreciate supporting the channel. If you want to train with me, go to bretttakcs.com. You can see the school, the classes I have. The 2025 schedule is just about ready to go up. And I am working on a whole series of other videos, both lessons and reviews that'll be coming out soon. So stay tuned. Make sure you hit the like, hit subscribe, hit the little bell so you get notified when those new reviews and new lessons come out. I'll see you guys then. Take care.